When God is preparing you for something greater, He will often remove you from your comfort zone. The places you once felt at home, the people you once relied on, and the routines that made you feel secure may suddenly start to shift. It's not always easy to recognize at first, but over time, you begin to see that what used to work no longer satisfies you. What once gave you peace may now feel unsettling. That's because God is stretching you, pushing you beyond what's familiar so you can step into what He has for you. Think about the story of Abraham. God told him to leave his homeland, his family, and everything he knew to go to a place that He would show him. Notice God didn't give him the full plan up front. He didn't lay out the details or make everything clear from the beginning. He simply said, go, and Abraham had to step out in faith, not knowing where he was going, but trusting that God was leading him. Maybe right now, you're in a season where God is asking you to step away from something comfortable. Maybe a job you've had for years no longer feels right, or a friendship that once brought you joy now feels forced. Perhaps you've outgrown an environment that used to serve you, and you're wondering why things feel different. That's the preparation process. God is moving you. He's unsettling you. And while it might feel uncomfortable, it's a sign that He is shifting you towards something greater. If you never left your comfort zone, you'd never grow. If you stayed in the same place with the same mindset, surrounded by the same people, you wouldn't be able to step into the new season God has for you. Growth requires change, and change is almost always uncomfortable. Sometimes we resist it. We hold on to relationships, jobs, or situations that God is trying to remove from our lives because they feel safe. But God sees the bigger picture. He knows that if He allowed you to stay where you are, you'd miss out on the blessings He has in store. That's why He will allow certain things to shift. He will close doors that you were never meant to walk through permanently. He will cause certain people to walk away because they were never meant to be part of your next chapter. Look at the story of Joseph. He was betrayed by his own brothers, sold into slavery, and thrown into prison for something he didn't do. But what looked like a series of setbacks was actually a setup for something greater. Had Joseph stayed in his father's house, he would have never become the ruler of Egypt. The very things that looked like losses were positioning him for his purpose. Maybe you're in a similar season right now. Maybe things don't make sense. Maybe you're questioning why God is allowing certain things to change in your life. But don't fight the shift. Instead, trust that God is moving you towards something better. The discomfort is not a sign that something is wrong. It's a sign that something is about to be made right. God never removes something without replacing it with something better. When He shifts you, it's always for your growth, your promotion, and your purpose. So instead of holding on to what's familiar, open your heart to what God is doing. It may not make sense now, but in time you'll see that every uncomfortable transition was necessary to take you where you were meant to be. Stay in faith, trust the process, and embrace the change. Because on the other side of discomfort is the breakthrough you've been praying for. When God is preparing you for something greater, you will face increased opposition. It may feel like the moment you decide to grow, the moment you commit to a new path, everything starts coming against you. The people you thought would support you begin to question you. The opportunities you were excited about suddenly hit roadblocks. You find yourself dealing with challenges you never saw coming. But this isn't a sign that you're on the wrong path. That's confirmation that you're on the right one. Opposition is a natural part of preparation. When God is about to elevate you, the enemy will try to discourage you. He knows that if he can shake your faith, if he can get you to doubt yourself, if he can convince you to quit before you step into your blessing, he can keep you from fulfilling your destiny. That's why in these moments of increased struggle, you have to stand firm. You have to recognize that the difficulty you're facing is not meant to stop you, it's meant to strengthen you. Look at David in the Bible. Before he became king, he faced opposition at every turn. He was overlooked by his own family when the prophet Samuel came to anoint a new king. He was just a shepherd boy tending to the sheep while his brothers were considered more qualified. But when the time came, David was chosen. That didn't mean his journey was easy. He had to face Goliath. He had to run for his life when King Saul became jealous of him. He had to endure seasons of hardship before he ever stepped into his calling. Maybe you're in a similar place right now. Maybe you feel like every time you try to move forward, something tries to push you back. Maybe you're dealing with criticism from people who don't understand your vision. Maybe you're feeling overwhelmed by obstacles that seem too big to overcome. But remember, this opposition is proof that you are getting closer to what God has for you. The enemy doesn't waste his time on people who aren't a threat. The fact that you're facing resistance means that there is something powerful inside of you that the enemy doesn't want to see fulfilled. You have to learn to push through. The resistance is not meant to break you, it's meant to build you. Think about how diamonds are formed. They don't come out of the ground shining and polished. They go through extreme pressure, heat, and refining before they become valuable. The same is true for you. The pressure you're feeling, the struggles you're facing, they are shaping you into the person God is calling you to be. When the opposition comes, don't let it make you bitter, let it make you better. Don't let it make you question yourself, let it confirm that you are on the right path. You are not alone in this. God is with you, strengthening you, preparing you, and leading you towards something greater. The people who doubted you, the circumstances that tried to break you, the moments of discouragement, they are all part of the process. Opposition is not the end of your story. It's just a chapter. And if you keep moving forward, if you keep trusting God, you will look back one day and realize that every battle you faced was necessary to get you to where you are. The very things that tried to stop you will become the things that made you stronger. So hold your head high. Keep pressing forward. The opposition may be great, but the calling on your life is greater. God wouldn't allow it if He wasn't preparing you for something bigger. Stay faithful, stay strong, and know that your breakthrough is coming. When God is preparing you for something greater, you will experience closed doors and delays. It can be frustrating, even discouraging when you are doing everything right, working hard, staying faithful, believing for more, yet doors keep shutting in your face. Opportunities that seem perfect suddenly disappear. Things you prayed for don't happen when you expect them to. You might wonder, why is this happening? Did I do something wrong? But what if I told you that the closed doors and the delays are actually part of God's divine plan? Too often we see a closed door as rejection, but in reality, it is God's redirection. He is not denying you, He is protecting you. That job that didn't hire you, that relationship that didn't work out, that opportunity that slipped away, it didn't happen because God has something better. He sees the road ahead. He knows what you cannot see. And sometimes the only way to guide you, your true destiny, is to close the doors that would lead you in the wrong direction. Think about Moses and the Israelites. When they left Egypt, they expected a straight path to the promised land. But instead, God took them through the wilderness. He could have taken them the short way. But He knew they weren't ready. He knew they still had to grow, to develop faith, to learn how to trust Him fully. So He delayed their journey not to harm them, but to prepare them. Maybe right now you feel like you are in a wilderness season. You've been praying, working, waiting, and nothing seems to be moving forward. You see others getting ahead while you remain in the same place. But let me remind you, God's delays are never wasted time. He is using this season to shape you, to refine you, and to prepare you for what's ahead. If He gave you the blessing too soon, you might not be ready to handle it. Look at David. He was anointed king as a young man, but he didn't take the throne immediately. He went through years of struggle, facing battles, running from King Saul, living in caves, enduring hardship. He could have thought, God, you called me to be king, so why am I still fighting these battles? But what David didn't realize was that the waiting season was developing him. It was teaching him leadership, patience, and wisdom. By the time he finally became king, he was prepared to lead with strength and humility. Sometimes we think we are ready for the next level, but God knows we need more time. Maybe there are lessons you still need to learn. Maybe there are habits you need to break, skills you need to develop, faith you need to strengthen. So instead of seeing a delay as a setback, start seeing it as a setup. God is not holding you back. He is positioning you for something better. If a door has closed, trust that it wasn't your door. If something didn't work out, trust that God has something greater in store. Instead of fighting against the delay, embrace it. Use this time to grow, to develop, to strengthen your relationship with God. Keep believing, keep trusting, and keep preparing, because when the right door opens, it will be bigger, better, and more fulfilling than anything you could have imagined. God's timing is always perfect. It may not happen when you want, but when it does happen, you will understand why you had to wait. The closed doors and the delays are not meant to stop you. They are meant to lead you to exactly where you are supposed to be. Stay in faith, because when God is preparing you, He is setting you up for something far greater than you can see right now. When God is preparing you for something greater, you will experience isolation and separation. This can be one of the hardest parts of the journey, because it often feels like the people you once depended on are suddenly distant. Friendships that were once strong begin to fade. People who were in your life for years start walking away. You may find yourself in a season where it feels like no one truly understands you. But let me remind you, this is not a coincidence. When God is preparing you, He often has to separate you from certain people, certain environments, and certain influences to elevate you to the next level. Isolation is not punishment, it's preparation. God is setting you apart because He has something special for you. When He is getting ready to take you higher, not everyone can go with you. Some people were only meant to be in your life for a season. They helped you get to a certain level, but they are not equipped to go where God is taking you next. Holding on to people who are not meant for your next chapter can delay your growth and even block the blessings that God is trying to bring into your life. Look at Joseph in the Bible. He had big dreams that God had placed in his heart. But the moment he shared those dreams with his brothers, they turned against him. They were jealous of what God was doing in his life, and instead of supporting him, they betrayed him. They threw him into a pit, sold him into slavery, and left him for dead. Joseph went through years of isolation, separated from his family, wrongfully imprisoned, forgotten by people he helped. But what seemed like rejection was actually God's direction. During Joseph's time of separation, God was molding him, developing his character, and preparing him for leadership. If Joseph had never been isolated, he would have never stepped into his destiny as the ruler of Egypt. The very people who betrayed him had to come back and bow before him. What they meant for harm, God turned for good. Maybe right now you feel like people are walking away from you. You feel alone, abandoned, misunderstood. But don't fight the separation, embrace it. God knows what He is doing. He is protecting you from relationships that no longer serve your purpose. He is removing distractions so you can focus on what really matters. Sometimes we hold on to people out of comfort, but God sees the bigger picture. He knows that if you stay connected to the wrong people, they will hinder your progress. There are times when God has to pull you away so He can work on you privately. When Jesus was preparing for His ministry, He spent 40 days in the wilderness alone. Before David became king, he spent years in isolation, tending to sheep and hiding from Saul. Before Moses led the Israelites to freedom, he spent 40 years in the desert. Separation is a pattern in God's process because He knows that the greatest growth happens in solitude. If you are in a season where it feels like you are losing people, don't be discouraged. God is making room for something better. The friendships He removes, He will replace with ones that align with your destiny. The relationships that fade away are clearing the path for new connections that will help you grow. You are not being isolated because you are forgotten. You are being isolated because you are chosen. Use this time to focus on your growth, to strengthen your faith, and to prepare for what's next. The loneliness won't last forever. But when God is finished, you will emerge stronger, wiser, and ready to walk into the destiny He has prepared for you. Trust the separation because it is leading you to something greater. When God is preparing you, you will experience intense challenges and hardships. It may feel like everything in your life is being tested: your faith, your patience, your endurance. You may face unexpected obstacles, disappointments, and setbacks that seem unfair. You might even wonder, why is this happening to me? Why is life suddenly so difficult? But what if I told you that the challenges you're facing right now are not meant to break you, but to build you? God never allows difficulty without purpose. Every trial, every hardship, every painful experience is shaping you for what's coming next. When you're in a season of preparation, God uses challenges to refine you, to stretch you, to develop the strength and character you will need for the blessings ahead. The pressure you feel is not punishment, it is part of the process. Think about an athlete training for a championship. They don't just show up on game day and expect to win. They go through intense training, pushing their limits, enduring pain, and making sacrifices. Why? Because the greater the competition, the greater the preparation. The same is true in life. If God is calling you to something great, He will prepare you through challenges that force you to grow. Look at Job in the Bible. He was a man of great faith, blessed with wealth, health, and a loving family. But suddenly he lost everything: his health, his children, his possessions. His friends doubted him, and even his wife told him to give up. Job had every reason to quit, but he refused to turn his back on God. He held on, even when he didn't understand why he was suffering. And in the end, God restored everything Job had lost twice as much as before. The hardship wasn't meant to destroy him. It was meant to prepare him for a greater blessing. Maybe you're in a situation where nothing seems to be working. You're giving your best effort, but doors keep closing. You've been believing for a breakthrough, but all you see are obstacles. Let me remind you, God never wastes pain. The difficulties you're facing are not a sign that you're on the wrong path. They are proof that God is strengthening you. He is increasing your endurance, sharpening your faith, and preparing you for the next level. A diamond is formed under extreme pressure. Gold is refined in fire. The most valuable things go through the most intense processes to become what they were meant to be. And the same applies to you. God is using the fire of adversity to shape you into something greater. If you didn't have challenges, you wouldn't develop the strength to handle what God is bringing into your life. David faced giants before he became king. Joseph endured betrayal, false accusations, and imprisonment before he stepped into his destiny. Even Jesus faced trials and suffering before he fulfilled his ultimate purpose. The greater the calling, the greater the preparation. So don't get discouraged when things get hard. Don't let challenges make you doubt what God is doing in your life. Instead, change your perspective. Realize that the difficulty is part of the plan. Every obstacle is an opportunity for growth. Every setback is a setup for something greater. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? Start asking, what is God teaching me through this? Because the truth is, your challenges are not here to stop you. They are here to equip you. The battles you are fighting today are preparing you for the victories of tomorrow. Stay faithful in the struggle. Keep trusting, keep pushing forward, and keep believing that God is working behind the scenes. Because when the time is right, He will take everything you've been through and use it to launch you into your destiny. The hardship is temporary, but the purpose God is preparing you for is eternal. When God is preparing you, He will require you to step out of your comfort zone. You may start feeling a deep restlessness, a sense that where you are is no longer where you're meant to be. Opportunities that once felt secure may start to fade, and doors you thought would always be open may suddenly close. It can be unsettling, even frightening, but this is not a sign that you're lost. It's a sign that God is shifting you towards something greater. Comfort zones are dangerous places. They keep us stuck in routines, afraid to take risks, afraid to grow. But God never called us to live in comfort. He called us to live in faith. If you want to step into the destiny He has for you, you have to be willing to step into the unknown. God will often shake things up in your life, not to harm you, but to move you forward. Think about Abraham in the Bible. He was living comfortably in his homeland when God told him, leave everything behind and go to the land I will show you. Abraham had no map, no clear destination, just a promise from God. It would have been easy for him to stay where he was, to cling to what was familiar, but instead he stepped out in faith. And because he was willing to leave his comfort zone, God blessed him beyond measure and made him the father of many nations. Maybe right now you feel like God is calling you to something new, but fear is holding you back. You feel unqualified, uncertain, unsure of what's next. But let me remind you, God doesn't call the qualified, He qualifies the called. He doesn't wait for you to have everything figured out before He moves in your life. He asks you to trust Him, to take that step of faith even when you can't see the whole picture. Moses was afraid to speak, but God called him to lead a nation. Gideon was filled with doubt, but God called him to be a mighty warrior. Peter was a fisherman, but Jesus called him to walk on water. Over and over we see that God calls people out of their comfort zones because that is where transformation happens. Maybe God is stirring something in your heart right now. Maybe He's telling you to start that business, apply for that job, move to that new place, step into that new role. But instead of moving forward, you're holding back because you feel unprepared. You're waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect conditions. But here's the truth, there will never be a perfect moment. Faith requires action, even in uncertainty. Look at the Israelites when they were standing at the edge of the Red Sea. They had an army chasing them from behind and an ocean blocking their path forward. It seemed impossible. But when did the sea part? Not when they stood still, not when they waited, but when Moses stretched out his hand in faith. The miracle happened when they moved forward. If you're feeling a pull to step into something new, don't ignore it. That restlessness is God preparing you for your next level. He is stretching you, pushing you beyond what you thought you were capable of. It may be uncomfortable, it may be scary, but that's where faith comes in. God has more for you than where you are right now. The life He has planned for you is bigger than the life you're living in your comfort zone. But you have to be willing to take that first step. Trust that if He's calling you to it, He will equip you for it. You may not see the whole staircase, but take the first step in faith and watch how God makes a way. When God is preparing you, He will teach you patience and delay certain blessings. This is one of the most difficult parts of the process because we live in a world that thrives on instant results. We want our prayers answered immediately. We want to step into our purpose right away. But God's timing is different from ours. He sees the whole picture while we only see a small piece. Maybe you've been praying for a breakthrough, believing for a door to open, or waiting for a promise to come to pass. But nothing seems to be happening. You feel stuck, overlooked, or forgotten. But let me remind you, delay does not mean denied. God is not ignoring you. He is preparing you. He is strengthening your faith, developing your character, and making sure you're truly ready for what's coming. Think about Joseph in the Bible. God gave him a dream that one day he would be a ruler, but instead of stepping into that promise right away, Joseph went through years of struggle. He was betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, and falsely accused. He spent years in prison for something he didn't do. It would have been easy for him to get discouraged, to think, God, did you forget about me? But Joseph stayed faithful. He didn't allow the delays to make him bitter. And in the right time, God elevated him to second in command over Egypt. If Joseph had received his promotion too soon, he wouldn't have been ready. The delay was part of the preparation. Maybe you're in a season where nothing seems to be moving forward. You've been working hard, staying faithful, but the doors are still closed. Let me encourage you, God's delays are not wasted time. He is doing something in you during the waiting. He is refining your patience, strengthening your endurance, and molding you into the person who can handle the blessing when it comes. Think about David. He was anointed to be king as a young shepherd boy, but he didn't take the throne immediately. He spent years in the wilderness running from King Saul, facing battles and enduring hardship. But all that time, God was training him. He was building his leadership skills, teaching him humility, and preparing him to be the great king he was called to be. Waiting is not a punishment. It is a sign that God is working behind the scenes, setting things up in ways you can't see. The longer the preparation, the greater the blessing. A tree with deep roots can withstand any storm. A foundation that takes longer to build can hold up a stronger structure. Maybe you're believing for a relationship, a new job, a financial breakthrough, or a dream to come to pass. And maybe it's taking longer than you expected. Don't lose heart. Instead of asking, why is this taking so long? Start asking God, what are you teaching me in this season? Because when the time is right, no force on earth can stop what God has for you. God is never in a hurry, but He is always on time. When a baby is born prematurely, there are health risks. If a cake is taken out of the oven too soon, it's not fully baked. In the same way, if you receive your blessing before you're ready, it won't be as strong or as lasting as it's meant to be. So don't grow weary in the waiting. Don't let impatience make you settle for something less than what God has for you. Stay faithful. Keep trusting. Because when the moment is right, the doors will open, the opportunity will come, and you'll look back and realize that the wait was worth it. What God has prepared for you is bigger than you imagine, and He is making sure you're truly ready to receive it. When God is preparing you, He will remove people from your life who are not meant to go with you to the next level. This can be one of the hardest signs to recognize because it often feels like rejection, betrayal, or unexpected loss. But when certain relationships start to shift, when people who were once close to you begin to pull away, or when friendships suddenly fade, It may not be an accident. It may be divine intervention. God knows what's ahead. He sees the path you cannot see. There are people in your life right now who may not be able to handle where He's taking you. Some relationships were only meant for a season, not a lifetime. If God allowed them to stay, they might hold you back, distract you, or even sabotage the blessing He has in store for you. Think about Abraham and Lot. God called Abraham to step into a new land, but Lot, his nephew, tagged along. At first, everything seemed fine, but eventually conflict arose between their people. It wasn't until Abraham and Lot separated that God gave Abraham a clearer vision of the land He had promised him. Lot wasn't a bad person, but he wasn't meant to go where Abraham was headed. Some people in your life may not be bad people, but they're not part of your destiny. Maybe right now you're wondering why a certain friend stopped calling, why a relationship ended, or why someone you trusted walked away. It hurts. It doesn't make sense. But what if that person was limiting your growth? What if they were distracting you from your purpose? Sometimes we try to hold on to people God is trying to remove. We beg them to stay. We chase after relationships that are no longer serving us. But what we don't realize is that their exit is making room for something better. Think about Jesus and His disciples. Not everyone stayed. Judas betrayed Him, and even Peter denied Him for a moment. But in the end, only those who were truly meant to be with Him remained. When God is preparing you, He will filter your relationships. He will remove people who are secretly against you, who don't support your growth, or who can't handle the calling on your life. Sometimes God removes people because they are blocking your blessing. If you stay attached to the wrong people, you may miss the new doors He is trying to open. You may miss the divine connections He is bringing into your life. If you're too focused on who left, you won't see who God is sending. Maybe you've experienced friendships that ended suddenly, relationships that didn't work out, or people you trusted who turned against you. Instead of asking, why did this happen to me? Start asking, God, what are you making room for? Because when one door closes, another one opens. God knows what you need for your next season. He knows the kind of friends, mentors, and partners you need to help you grow. If someone walked away, trust that it was for a reason. If a door closed, trust that something better is on the way. Don't waste time mourning over what God has removed. Instead, prepare yourself for the new connections, the new opportunities, and the new blessings He is bringing into your life. God will never take something away without the intention of replacing it with something greater. If He is removing certain people, it's because they were never meant to stay. Let them go in peace. Keep your heart open, because what's ahead is far better than anything you've left behind.